One of the hardest things to do in English is to follow and understand a conversation between multiple people. In this video, I'm going to train you to listen and understand fast English speech. Now, this is a problem that's very close to my heart because when I lived in Buenos Aires, I had exactly the same problem in Spanish. I remember being at a party and talking in a group. The conversation flowed so fast and people were talking so quickly that by the time I'd understood what they were saying and I figured out what I wanted to say, the topic of conversation had gone. I remember the panic and fear of waiting to add my comment and thinking, oh my goodness, what if I get this wrong? What if the topic has completely changed? And to be honest, often it had. So if you felt this in English, don't worry, I totally understand. You're definitely not alone. So in this video, I'm going to train you to listen and understand fast English speech so that you can participate in everyday conversation. I've got a clip of Ed Sheeran speaking on a British chat show, and we're going to use this to develop a few techniques to understand fast speech. Now we're going to listen to it several times. The first time, I want you to listen and just get a general overall understanding of what's going on. Don't worry if you don't understand every single word. The first person is a comedian called Josh Widdicombe. The second person is Ed Sheeran. See if you can find out what is the first person's problem and what does Ed Sheeran ask him. I'll see you after the clip.
I've built a career of being mistaken for Ed Sheeran. I've had it quite a few times.
Do you get laid?
You what?
Do you get laid? I'm just wondering, I meet ginger people all the time that are like, thanks.
Okay, how much did you understand? Don't worry if you didn't get everything. That's why we're here. So what was the first speaker's problem? Well, the first speaker, Josh Widdicombe, says that he is mistaken for Ed Sheeran. So people think that he looks like Ed Sheeran all the time. Now, what did Ed Sheeran ask him?
Do you get laid?
You what?
Do you get laid?
Well, he said, do you get laid? Do you get laid?
Do you get laid?
You what?
Do you get laid?
Okay, we're going to dive into that sentence in detail. Now, if you didn't understand that conversation, there might be a few reasons why. So let's dive into the first reason. Now, the first issue might be that sometimes people articulate words in unfamiliar ways. For example, Josh Widdicombe here says being, but he sort of blurts it out. I think he's kind of laughing as he says it, and it sounds more like bring.
I've built a career of being...
Now, that's an unfamiliar sound to me, let alone to someone whose first language isn't English.
Now,
if someone pronounces something in an unfamiliar way and you don't understand, that can set off alarm bells and you struggle to figure out what did they just say. And as you're sort of trying to figure that out, they're still speaking, so you're then trying to catch up on the rest of the sentence. So that can cause a lot of problems. Now, this is just the nature of spontaneous speech. Sometimes we say things in strange or unfamiliar ways, and that's okay. That's just natural conversation. Okay, so we had that kind of unfamiliar sound. Let's move on to Ed Sheeran's question, do you get laid?
Do you get laid?
You what?
Do you get laid?
Now, a huge issue in understanding fast speech is vocabulary. Did you understand the phrase get laid? Maybe you did, and congratulations, but maybe you didn't. The meaning of it is it's an informal way of saying have sex. If you didn't know that, then you didn't know half of the sentence. There are 4 words and you didn't know 2 of them, so all you had was do you, and then you're lost. So not knowing the vocabulary impairs our understanding of the sentence. Whereas if you didn't understand the grammar, if he said, does you get laid? Well, the grammar is wrong, but I would still understand the sentence. Which leads me to a point that lots of linguists talk about, which is putting our focus much more on learning vocabulary than grammar. Because if I don't understand the vocabulary in a sentence, all meaning is lost. But if I don't understand the grammar, it's okay. I still kind of have a gist of what's going on. So I want you to reflect on that. How much vocabulary do you study? What's the balance between how much grammar you study and how much vocabulary? We'll come back to that later on. Now, the third and last issue I want to talk about here is the way that Ed Sheeran blended sounds and words together. He almost created like a word smoothie, right?
Do you get laid?
You what?
Do you get laid?
Instead of do you, he said do. Do you get laid? Do you get laid?
Do you get laid?
You what?
Do you get laid?
What he did there was he used something called connected speech, and particularly assimilation, where you blend those sounds together because, well, it's easier for you to say. So he said, do you get laid? Do you get laid, right? Which is really easy to say, not so easy to understand for you trying to understand fast speech. And in fact, in this clip, Josh Widdicombe didn't understand, did he? He actually said, you what?
Do you get laid?
You what?
Do you get laid?
You what? Which is a kind of very informal way of saying pardon or sorry, I didn't understand. So actually you've got two proficient English speakers here and they're speaking and one of them didn't understand the other one because he spoke very quickly and he used assimilation. Do you get laid? So he had to repeat himself. Okay, let's listen to the clip again and see how much you understand.
I've built a career of being mistaken for Ed Sheeran. I've had it quite a few times.
Do you get laid?
You what?
Do you get laid? I'm just wondering, I meet ginger people all the time that are like, thanks.
Now, as a learner, I think a great technique to train yourself to understand fast speech is to actually slow the clip down. So I'm going to play it to you at a reduced speed. And I want you to focus on the things that we spoke about. So the way that he says bring or being, the way he uses connected speech, and the vocabulary that he uses. Okay? Let's see how much you understand here.
I've built a career of being mistaken for Ed Sheeran. I've had it quite a few times.
Do you get laid?
You what?
Do you get laid? I'm just wondering, I meet ginger people all the time that are like, thanks.
Okay, how was that? Now that we've slowed it down, hopefully that should make a lot more sense to you. Okay, so let's review the steps that we can take to understand fast speech. First one was shifting our focus to learning more vocabulary over grammar. That doesn't mean neglecting grammar, it just means shifting the focus a little more to vocabulary. So if, let's say, you're spending 30% of your time learning vocabulary now, could you up it to 40%? And think about the context that you're in. So if you love fashion and you use English to talk about fashion, then maybe that's where you should focus. Spend time watching fashion YouTubers in English or reading fashion blogs in English so that you're surrounding yourself in the kind of vocabulary that you're going to be using and hearing at the same time. The second thing is to accept that people say things in unfamiliar ways. Maybe they make a mistake in the way they pronounce something, or maybe they're using an accent that you've not heard before. Therefore, what you should do is arm yourself with the tools that will help you to make it through that conversation. So phrases like pardon, or so sorry I didn't understand what you said, or sorry I didn't catch that, all great ways to get someone to say something again because maybe you didn't hear it the first time. And as you saw in that clip, even proficient English speakers don't always hear things first time. So prepare yourself for those situations. The third tip would be to spend time learning how proficient speakers blend sounds and words together. You remember how Ed Sheeran said do instead of do you? And that was what we call connected speech. Learning this will transform your English. Now, I actually have an online pronunciation course which has a whole module on connected speech. If you're curious and you'd like to learn more, then you can check it out in the link below or on my website shop.eatsleepdreamenglish.com. My fourth tip would be to study in bite-sized chunks. Today we looked at a 30-second clip of natural English speech and we really focused in on the details of what was going on. I think taking a small amount of language and studying it so that we understand it properly is really beneficial. Of course, I think you should watch these programs to enjoy them and to get a general sort of global understanding, but also mix that up with kind of focused learning on a small chunk. Finally, I think if you want to understand fast speech, then you should start by slowing it down. If you're training for a marathon, you don't start by running the length of a marathon, do you? You start small. You start with maybe a mile, then you do 2 miles, and then you go to 5 miles and so on. You build it up. So I think for you, perhaps what would be a great idea is to take an authentic conversation like the one I picked. Slow it down, really understand what's going on. What are the pronunciation features that they're using? What vocabulary are they using? And start to build up your understanding from that point. Then you can speed it up as you go. Now, obviously, in real life, you can't slow it down, but this is training, you're practicing. You're not expected to understand fast speech straight away, okay? So slow it down and go from there. Right, I'd love to know your thoughts. Please leave them in the comments below. Which of these techniques do you like, and do you have any other techniques that you use to understand fast speech?